Commander Valentina Cross comes to the frozen world of Arcturus Prime, where colonists mysteriously disappeared, and finds the horrific ice tentacle beasties have been keeping the humans frozen for generations, keeping them alive long after their own civilization has been destroyed by the never-ending cold. Contacting and comprehending with thought rather than war, Valentina initiates unprecedented relations between humanity and the other, turning foes into allies and expectation into possibility, fostering a new civilization built on creativity, technology, and a sense of unity, which will eliminate both the other and their dying planet. The Hall transport a metal wind against the vacuum of space as Commander Valentina cross-pound the frosted viewport. Beneath her lay an infinite sheet of crystalline death, the planet Arcturus Prime, from which 3 colonies of humans had vanished without a sign. The ice world rotated slowly below a pair of helpless suns, which gave out no warmth, only cold blue light that caused the frigid landscape to glitter like crushed glass. No sign of a surface return on any of the beacons, called out Lieutenant Marcus Chen from communications. His voice shook with a modulated fear, that of one who finds himself it could have been the edge. The keening, the shriek reserved for those who dared approach a graveyard planet, Colony Base 7, last transmitted 47 days ago. Valentina's reflection looked back at her from the viewport's sharp green eyes. Auburn hair pulled back in a military bun, and a face that had looked on far too many battles in far too many worlds. At 32, she'd made herself the best planetary reconquest specialist in the Alliance. When the colonies of mankind go dark, one woman is commissioned to redraw them back into the light. That woman is Valentina Cross. Any life signs? She inquired, knowing what the reply would be. Nothing human, Chen replied, but the sensors are finding huge biosignatures up and down the northern continents. Whatever it is down there, it's large, and there's thousands of them. The bridge fell silent, save for the hum of life support. Valentina had read the secret reports of the earlier flights. Arcturus Prime was the first expedition's ideal terraforming candidate. Plentiful rare minerals, stable orbit, existing water locked under the polar ice caps. The second mission had upgraded Colony Base 7 and started the early atmospheric processes. The third expedition had come to an empty colony and found evidence of a struggle but no corpses. Commander, shouted mission xenobiologist, Dr. Amelia Reeves, I'm picking up some strange M readings off the planet. The patterns are almost organic. Valentina turned from the viewport. Dr. Reeves sat hunched over her console, her normally immaculate blonde hair tousled, as if she'd spent the past few hours tearing at it. The scientist had volunteered for this mission despite her peers' advice. She had lost her brother in the second expedition, and Valentina could read the look of someone seeking answers or revenge. What kind of organic? Valentina asked. Neural patterns, Dr. Reeves answered in a hush, like synaptic firing, but in enormous volume. Commander, I believe we are dealing with a hive mind. It was a jarring message for the bridge crew. Collective intelligences were not common in the galaxy, and those humanity had encountered had been entirely benign or spectacularly hostile. There wasn't much of a gray area. Prep the drop pods, Valentina said. Full combat loadout. We're going down to investigate. Captain, regulations state that we have at least 48 hours of recon before you can make a surface drop, objected Captain Jonathan Burke, the skipper of the ship. He was a by-the-book officer who had never experienced real combat, a type of individual who considered regulations to be manna from heaven. Captain, 3 colonies have gone dark planetside. Every day that we wait here, we are losing potential survivors if they are down there. Valentina's words had the gravitas of someone who had plucked living colonists from the fangs of alien predators on 7 other worlds. I'll take full responsibility. Burke's jaw clenched, but he nodded. He might not approve of field commanders who broke the rules, but he respected results, and Valentina Cross delivered results. 2 hours later, Valentina was wearing a drop bay and was checking the seals of her environmental suit one last time. The suit had been a human engineering masterpiece, hermetically sealed from the elements, temperature controlled, carrying enough weaponry to level a shed. But watching the frost that had already formed on the bay's walls, she wondered whether it would be enough. Her team had 4 specialists, Dr. Reeves, 2 Marine corporals, Diego Santos and Patricia Wang, and a combat engineer, Tyler Brooks. Each had signed on for danger pay and the opportunity of a lifetime to be the one to solve one of the Alliance's greatest mysteries. Drop in 60 seconds, the Bay AI called out. Surface temperature, 289 degrees. Kelvin, speed of the wind, 45 kmph. Atmospheric pressure, 0.7 standard. Valentina switched on the self-heating system within her suit, and the comforting heat took the chill from her extremities. Remember, we stick together. No heroes, no wandering off. We locate the colony, figure out what happened, and escape. The drop pods catapulted forward with a stomach-churning jolt that pinned them back in their acceleration couches. With the pods, small window, Valentina saw the transport vessel dwindle into a mere pinprick as they plummeted toward the icy world beneath. The heat shields of the pods glowed a fiery cherry red as they sliced through the thin atmosphere, and she knew the conflicting brew of excitement and terror that always accompanied dropping onto a death world. With a jarring impact that would have killed an unarmored man, they slammed onto the ground on the planet's surface. Valentina's pod hissed open, and she emerged into a frozen hell. The cold seemed to punch her, even through the insulation of her suit. Miles and miles in every direction. It was the same harsh, unrelenting wasteland, sharp ice teeth, frozen lakes that glowed blue with the light from both of the suns, a wind that howled with the voice of a twisted god. Off in the distance she could see the black and white shapes of Colony Base 7's buildings against the snow. Jesus Christ, came Corporal Santos' voice over the cum. This place makes Siberia seem like a beach resort. Keep your heads, Valentina commanded, verifying her own weapon systems. The plasma rifle began to hum, its energy signature reporting optimal levels despite the cold. Reeves, what do you see? Here, the Earth's electromagnetic signatures were stronger. They are here, the woman stated, her voice strong with effort. They're coming from under the ice, deep beneath it. They started walking toward the colony, the crunch of their magnetic boots in the snow echoing one another. They were so cold that the moisture from their breath turned to ice and floated away on the breeze. Valentina, who had been in hostile situations before, but nothing like this. Arcturus Prime didn't just want to end their lives, it wanted to hold them in ice forever. As they drew closer to the perimeter of the colony, Valentina started to observe things that the orbital survey scans had overlooked. The ice encasing the buildings was not natural to smooth to purposeful. It appeared almost as if it had been intelligently designed. Commander, called Corporal Wang, I got something shiny moving in the ice. Something's shifting beneath the surface. Valentina put up a hand, and the team stopped what they were doing. For a moment, the only thing one could hear was the wind howling across a glacial wasteland. Then she spotted it, a ripple in the ice, like something gargantuan swimming beneath the surface of a frozen lake. Step 2, defensive positions, she commanded, and her team fanned out into a combat formation they had drilled 1,000 times. Dr. Reeves, talk to me. What are we dealing with? The neural patterns are spiking, Dr. Reeves said, her voice awestruck and terrified. It's the ice sheet doing what it's not supposed to be doing. Burke, Commander, I think we're standing on something. Sounds like gunshots rippled through the ice beneath their feet. The ground was shaken for Valentina, and suddenly she knew why. The ice didn't just cover the planet, it was the planet's skin, and something vast was stirring, rising beneath. Move, she cried, but it was too late. The ice exploded into a cloud of crystalline shards around them. Horrific monsters of tentacles and grotesquerie the size of boxcars poured out of the holes, and their translucent bodies undulated with pulsing organs that glowed with bioluminescent light. These weren't simply appendages, they were weapons, lined with crystalline spikes that could knife through steel. Open fire, Valentina ordered, and plasma bolts irradiated the icy terrain. The energy weapons had been meant to slice through any known substance, but the creature's hide appeared to drink in the strikes, their flesh wavering beneath the attack. A tentacle banded around Corporal Santos' waist, and the man was hauled into the air, screaming. The alien's stronghold was causing his environmental suit to crumple in. Valentina spun with 3 shots at the creature's torso, at last adding a chink in its armor. The creature made a noise like the breaking of glass and released Santos, letting him crash to the ice with a sickening thud. Santos is down, shouted Corporal Wang as she pulled her marine companion behind an outcropping of ice. His suit's compromised. In minutes the cold would finish him off were it not for his environmental suit. Valentina's mind flashed through their possibilities as ever more creatures emerged from the ice. They were surrounded, heavily outnumbered, and running out of time. Tyler, can you slap a suit patch on Santos? She yelled to their engineer, working on it. Brooks' response was shaky as he attempted to use emergency sealant to repair the suit. But we have to get him to someplace warm, right away. There were more things there in the ice, their tentacles flailing out of the air like some godful sea anemone. But as Valentina watched them, she found patterns in their dance. They weren't striking randomly, they were doing it in concert, with planning, intelligent. You said these things reflected neural patterns, Dr. Reeves, she called out. Are they perhaps trying to say something? Could be, the scientist answered, instead, shooting her sidearm at an approaching enemy. But Commander, we aren't in a first contact situation now. But Valentina was already in motion. Her soldiers sensed screaming at her that the most dangerous thing to do was often the only thing that led to survival at all. She returned her gun to its holster and advanced with her hands up in what she hoped would be a universal sign of peaceful intentions. The creatures stopped their advance. Their tentacles had been lashing the air like deadly whips suddenly, and for no obvious reason became motionless. Valentina was aware of dozens of pairs of alien eyes settling on her, and for a moment she had the impression she was being assessed. Commander, what are you doing? Demanded Corporal Wang. What I always do, Valentina said. Something crazy. She made another step forward, and the closest of the creatures stretched one of its tentacles towards her, not in an assault but what may have been a gesture of contact. The appendage halted a mere inch from her helmet, and she could see the crystalline point of it pulsing with the same bioluminescent glow as the creature's body of light. Dr. Reeves, are you taping this? Valentina asked. A second, replied the scientist, awestruck. Commander, neural patterns are shifting. It's like they are trying to forge a link. Valentina took off one of her gloves and touched the creature. The point of contact vibrated along her entire form, not electric, exactly, but more fundamental somehow. And then, suddenly, images, feelings, and thoughts that did not belong to her filled her mind. She was looking at Arcturus Prime as it was. Eons ago, a warm, lush world with oceans and continents. The creatures, as they had been back then. Not beasts, but a tremendously evolved civilization, who had once constructed cities of living ice and could travel in a magnificent orchestra of collective minds. She looked up at the wonders of what could be, and she saw the cosmic apocalypse that had enveloped their world, their twin suns fading to cold cinders, their atmosphere freezing, their people driven to burrow beneath the ice to survive. But, more important, she beheld what had become of the human colonists. They weren't dead, they were preserved. The sentience, the creatures knew, and had put into stasis under the ice to await the day when they could be released. And not until then the vision ceased, and Valentina was back on the ice of Arcturus Prime with the beasts. No longer monsters, but possibly comrades. She knew now why the last parties had failed. They had arrived as conquerors, not as guests. They aren't aggressive, she told her team. They're trying to help. Sir, with all due respect, those things just tried to kill us. Corporal Wang objected. No, answered Valentina with firmness in her tones. They were defending their home, just like we would. She spoke to the closest beast without turning away, feeling that it would comprehend. It had been a two-way neural connection. They'd looked into her mind just as she had into theirs. I am Valentina Cross, she announced, fully aware that her words would be translated via the neural link. I represent the Human Alliance. We came here in search of our people. The creature's answer was not in words, but in pictures and feelings sent straight to her brain. She saw the facility where they colonists were kept, great caverns under the ice, crystalline pods housing perfect stasis. She watched as the creatures fought to keep the humans alive, even as their own society faded into an endless cold. They need help, Valentina told her teammates. Their world is dying, and they are using all their energy to keep our people alive. Dr. Reeves took a step forward, her scientific curiosity overcoming fear. Commander, if this is indeed what you tell me, we are seeing one of the most advanced displays of species intermingling in history. It's more than that, Valentina said, more and more memories flooding into her head. They're offering us a partnership. They have tech far beyond US genetic manipulation, group mind, the power to change planets, but they can use our help to restore their world. The thing which had made contact with her reached out another tentacle, but this one did not have a point like the first. At the end was something that looked much more like a complex organic interface. More pictures were pouring through the brain link, visions of human technology that interfaced perfectly with the creature's living technology, of where a heartless, mechanical Arcturus Prime became the sort of world in which both species could flourish. They are showing me the future, Valentina whispered. A world of ice and fire as two peoples merged. Tyler Brooks, quietly working at the back of the room on Santo's suit, suddenly broke his silence. I don't like this, Commander, reading huge energy sigs from under the ice. It's like they're charging up for something big. The ground at their feet had begun to hum, and the ice around them was glowing with the same bioluminescent light that radiated from the creatures' bodies. Valentina began to feel like the whole world was waking up to them, slowly snapping out of an amnesia. They're letting us see the colony, she declared, as the fresh images appeared before her view. Our people are alive, but they are in some kind of stasis. The creatures have been putting them in stasis, waiting for the right moment to wake them back up. What right moment? Asked Dr. Reeves. When we arrived, Valentina replied. They're waiting for us to return. They have to have human technology to regenerate their world, but we need their knowledge to understand that we may surpass our own limits. The thing that had been talking to her suddenly retracted a tentacle and made a noise like singing crystal. The rest replied in kind, their voices taking up the tune and blending together in resonance that made the air quiver. The ice beneath their feet started to split, and not ominously it was peeling back, revealing an opening pathway reaching down into the planet. They're telling us to come down, Valentina said, to look upon our people and to behold their civilization. Corporal Wong shook her head. Captain, this could be an ambush. We have enough faith in these things. Sometimes you just have to trust that it will work out, Valentina answered. And occasionally a warrior knows when it's time to lay down her weapons. She went to start walking down to the passage, and her team followed after a moment's hesitation. The beings walked with them, their tentacles forming a living hallway that led the way further into the world. The passage opened to a mighty chamber that had Valentina gasping for air. The walls were infested by bioluminescent growths that leached with their own inner light. Their shapes seemed to dance and change as she watched. In the middle of the hall was some kind of structure, no mere building, no mere organic being, no mere piece of art. It was lively, respirant, and beautiful in a manner anatomies would never be. My God, whispered Dr. Reeves. It's like a city built out of dreams. When they got closer, Valentina saw them human bodies in crystalline pods that adorned the walls like decorations. There must have been dozens, perhaps hundreds, all perfectly encased in stasis. She saw some of the faces from the mission files, colonists who had been declared dead months earlier. They're all here, she breathed. All of the lost from each expedition. The one leading creature reached out a tentacle to a pod, and Valentina felt a question begin to form in her head. They wanted permission to awaken. The beings could bring the humans back, but they required her permission. The permission of a warrior they deemed worthy. Do it, she said. The pod's glow intensified, and the person inside, a young woman Valentina knew as Dr. Patricia Martinez, the leader of the second expedition's botanist, began to wake up. The crust of the pod turned to sugar and water, and for the first time in 8 months, Dr. Martinez opened her eyes. Where ... she started, then saw Valentina's environmental suit, and stopped. You're human. You came for us. We came to get you, Valentina said. All of you. More and more pods were opening, and more colonists woke up, and the full reality of what was happening hit Valentina. Not only had she located the disappeared colonists, she had located a new form of life, a new way of thinking about difference between species. The creatures, she realized, were preserving the humans not from goodness of spirit. They were making them for a reason. They saw a possibility of something more, a symbiosis that could change both them and us in the days that followed. As the colonists came back to life, the shock of the first encounter receding, Valentina gradually realized the magnitude of what the creatures were offering. They had the ability to transform planets in ways mankind had never considered possible. They'd engineer biological systems that were partly living, partly mechanical organisms that could survive anywhere, but they wanted something in exchange: human creativity, human ingenuity, and human courage. The beings had existed for thousands of years, existing within a collective consciousness, but they'd lost something. They had forgotten to dream their own dreams, to take risks, to go where no one had gone, all the while blissfully unaware of the role such realism had played in pushing humanity from answers to enlightenment. They're pitching an alliance. To us, Valentina told Captain Burke in a fraught communication session with the transport ship. Not conquest, not subjugation, but genuine collaboration. Commander, the Council would never, Apro Burke began. In particular, one that's had our people as hostages. They weren't captives, Valentina insisted. They were guests. But they were treated as honored guests who were being shielded as their hosts bided their time to reach out. Dr. Reeves, who had just spent 3 days studying the creatures' biological systems, joined in the conversation. Captain, what we're looking at is a scientific breakthrough of unprecedented magnitude. These beings have technology on a level of bioengineering that would make our best systems look like a primitive twig. And what do they ask for in response? Burke asked. Valentina watched the creatures that surrounded them, their tentacles, waving softly in the warm air of the underground city. She had learned to read their body language, the subtle variations in their bioluminescent patterns that conveyed moods. "They want to hear from us," she said. "They want to learn what it means to have personal identity, but not lose that part of themselves to be something larger. They want to dream the impossible dream and then make it real." One of the aliens, the one who had first spoken to her, reached out a tentacle to the communication console. The neural link flooded them with images of those things that Burke and the others might do together. They glimpsed realms in which fire and ice were one, where cities were alive like men, where elements were not divided by their nature. They witnessed spaceships that were vessel and creature combined, mutating circuit by tentacle to suit any environment. They saw medicine that could cure any wound, reverse any disease, draw human life out indefinitely. "They're not asking us to give up of our humanity," Valentina said. "They are asking us to expand it." It was a unanimous decision, when it came. Faced with the tangible evidence of what the creatures could provide, the Alliance Council sanctioned official first contact protocols. Yet they also demanded Valentina stay on Arcturus Prime as ambassador between the two races. She accepted the role gladly. In the months that followed, she observed as human and alien technology began to blend in ways that previously would have been impossible to imagine. The stasis-preserved colonists that were the first generation there became the prototype of what would become a hybrid thinker, a human who could directly interface with the creatures. Subterranean collective while still maintaining their own self. Then, over the years, using the creatures as instruments, Dr. Reeves experimented with new types of biotechnologies capable of turning waste worlds into gardens. The Marine corporals were ambassadors of a sort, instructing the creatures in human understandings of courage, sacrifice and individual heroism. But it was Valentina who had become the bridge between their species, the warrior that had not won by force, but through comprehension. She mastered the language of the creatures, images and feelings, and learned how to think as the collective mind of everything, always holding on to her own thoughts. And the creatures, in their turn, learned what it was to be human from her. They learned of the efficacy of individual dreams, the power in personal responsibility, and the beauty of making choices that not only affected the collective, but the individual soul. As the end of the first year approached a close, Valentina walked out of Arcturus Prime's Telejibgar and looked at the sunrise. The planet was changing, the ice beginning to thaw in managed tracks, exposing frozen soil that hadn't been touched for millennia. The species had used their own biotechnology to manufacture atmospheric processes, working alongside the planet's natural processes to gradually morph it into a condition more conducive to both species. Instead, the colonists had constructed a city above the surface that was both human and the living buildings of the creatures combined. It was the land of ice and fire, where technology and biology rubbed against each other like two sticks and sparked something even beyond magic. "Commander," called Dr. Reeves, striding toward them over the snow. "It's a further progress report. The Council is calling for—" Valentina grinned, the cold air crystallizing her breath. "Tell them we're not just taking a survival," he said. "We're thriving." As she did, one creature slid out of the ice a short distance away, waving its tentacles in what she'd heard was a wave. It gestured to her with the familiarity of an old friend, and she reached out to touch the open hand. She felt the creature's satisfaction through the neural link, its pleasure at all of the transformations that was happening on their world. But she also felt another sensation: thanks. The animals were thankful not only for the technology and science the humans had brought, they were thankful for the reminder of what it was to be alive as a single individual. "We are not taking over this world," Valentina told Dr. Reeves. "We're bringing it back to what it used to be." The scientist's eyes sparkled with enthusiasm. "The most recent readings of the atmosphere indicate we can breathe the air without suits in another 5 years. The biological processes on the creatures are faster than we forecast." "And the hybrid colony ship?" Valentina asked early. Dr. Reeves said, "The humans' engineering and the creatures' biotechnology are jointly producing results. Neither side could have delivered alone." Valentina was proud in a way that had nothing to do with military success. She had come to Arcturus Prime as a fighter, to battle for her kind. Instead, she had discovered something more precious than any victory, an alliance that would change their species forever, and allow each to achieve their greatest potential in ways neither could ever have done. Alone, whatever the animal that had been in contact with her in the ice had sent its image through the neural link. projecting a vision of the future in which spaces and ice dwellers would work together, transforming whole solar systems, and the distinction in species had become irrelevant, and the galaxy itself was their canvas. "What did it show you?" Dr. Reeves asked. "Everything," Valentina replied. "It revealed to me everything we can be." The twin suns dipped low behind the mountains of ice, and as the long shadows fell over the transformed Earth, Valentina Crossfor, she was no longer a warrior, but a conduit between worlds, stood amid the creatures who had been her enemies and were now her comrades. The Ice Death planet had come to be a representation of what could be done when species elected cooperation over conquest, knowledge over fear. The cold wind still whipped across Arcturus Prime, but now it was a harbinger of spring. The world was stirring, and along with it, both species were learning what they could be together. The warrior had gained mastery not through brutality, but through sympathy, not through power, but by the bravery to believe in the impossible, and, beneath the ice, toiling deep beneath the creature's city, the future was being born, a future in which the descendants of both species would look to this day as the one where two civilizations had truly become one, where the galaxy had become just a little less lonely, and where the impossible had finally become inevitable. The monsters in the ice, the tentacled beings who had once been slaves, had become subjects not through enslavement, but respect, partners, in that dance of transformation, one that would resonate across the stars for generations to come. And at the heart of it all was Valentina Cross, the human warrior who had won a world and won against death by choosing life, and won against enemies by being willing to extend her hand to them in friendship. The Ice Death planet would never see the same again, but then, of course, nor would the galaxy.